I'm Harrison.
And I'm Ameer, and we believe that one of life's most valuable assets is the gift of conversation.
In the midst of life, sometimes we forget the true power of a deep, meaningful conversation.
So take a breath, come join us,
and let's talk about life. Hello, welcome back to the Let's Talk About Life podcast. Thank you so much for joining us here today and dropping into this conversation. Really appreciate you being here. My name is Harrison King.
And my name's Ameer Corro.
And we're going to have a little chat about expectations, or we're going to start with not having expectations, lack of expectations, or however you want to put it, because having expectations can cause problems, and we can't control our lives. And if we have expectations, we'll probably be disappointed. And I think that not having expectations leads you to being more mindful and more present. So that's just been on my mind today. Been trying to be more present and mindful, like really, truly, not just saying it. Just going for a walk and like fully being there and not having any expectations for my walk. I just go and like, let's see what happens, And I think that is something that we don't do enough of. So what are your thoughts on expectations? What's that? What comes to mind when I say that? Either not having expectations or having expectations, Ameer?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Well, it makes me think of two things in particular. On one hand, when I hear the word expectations, the first word that comes to my mind, and this is just based off of my experience as an Asian kid growing up, but family, parental expectations on one hand. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, when it comes to not having expectations, I think of non-attachment, of future paths, and just navigating, change and uncertainty. And actually, last night I had an epiphany, and I was meaning to share this earlier, but last night I had an epiphany. So for you listening, basically I'm at a major crossroads. I'm leaving home in essentially like 2.5 weeks, and it's overwhelming for sure. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Even just thinking about it now, I was crying earlier, but anyways, I'm at a major life crossroads, and kind of what I learned last night was essentially what we're talking about today: to not have expectations, to relinquish, attachments to outcomes. I was thinking about this last night, but basically in the context of like my possessions and the things that I own, because I'll be like moving to a different location, I was thinking about, oh my gosh, what I'm going to take with me, my piano, my gear, like all that kind of stuff. And realizing that, I am attached to some of my possessions, right? Realizing that I can't let these things go. And, it's a pretty common saying that you might hear, but if you can't let go of your possessions, then you don't own them, they own you, right? And so in many ways, I think I'm kind of entering a minimalist period in my life. And what I've learned is that like uncertainty, in order to survive uncertainty favors the flexible, at least in my experience, because if you're like really bolted down and like rooted down, like settled into something, when the strong winds of change blow, it kind of it'll rip out those roots, it'll break more. But if you're more light, if you're more free, if you're open to different possibilities and pivoting, then ultimately uncertainty can really carry you far. So in a way, I'm kind of like letting go of my attachment to things, but also letting go of my attachment to outcomes as well. Like not having anything to, I need this to happen, or I need to have this workout, but more so just being open and having open hands. It's so much easier said than done, and I'm still learning how to do it. But when I think about not having expectations, that's what comes to mind. Not needing anything of this decision, not needing anything of the future path, but instead just like welcoming whatever life brings me,
Right.
And I think it's so much easier said than done, yeah, but that's how it's manifesting for me. What about you?
Yeah, well, I think the problem comes when you have goals and stuff. There's kind of this like just things are bumping into one another, because you're like, I don't want to have expectations, but I want to have a direction and a goal. But that means you have to have some sort of kind of expectation of yourself, to achieve those things. So it's like, I don't think all expectations are bad, right? Like, I don't think it's an inherently a bad thing. It just means that you yeah, you want something to happen, or you're hoping something will happen, which is fine, but I think in like it has to be in a certain in certain contexts. So like for myself, you asked like I have expectations of how things will play out once I start to implement things I'm working towards or goals that I want to yeah, I want to achieve. So or just even ways of living or whatever. So like I will think in my brain about what that's where you do thinking, Harrison. Thank you. Um
I think in my belly.
yeah, hey, you never know. Um anyway, like when I'm thinking about goals and like the plan and what to do, like I create an expectation of how that's going to play out for myself because that's I'm choosing to do like have these uh acting in this way, doing these things that's going to cause so blah 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 to happen, and then I'll get closer to my goal, right? Which in itself is like an expectation that that's what's going to happen, right? That's what's going to happen. Now I think like we all know it's not going to go exactly that way, but um that's where I think this why I wanted to kind of talk about this because I think I'm very goal oriented and more so just like looking forward. Amir's like me too.
Guilty.
Just like looking forward. I think a lot of people are, right? Like which can cause you to not worry about what's happening right now. And also, you know, if you're always thinking ahead and like having expectations of how things are gonna go based on what you're working towards moving ahead, then you're not just able to be present. It makes it very hard. And because that's something I was trying to like think about today, I realized that like not having expectations can be kind of like a pathway to clearing your mind and feeling more calm and peace and all those different things and just mindfulness in general because that in itself is like not having expectation. You know what I mean? Like even if like you go into a meditation, you're like, I'm gonna sit down and do this. You can have like an intention. And I guess that's where kind of the lines get blurred, but like you can have an intention, but if you go in there with an expectation that this is what's gonna happen, like it won't work. I've done that many times where I'm like, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna come out feeling super calm. And then I'm not. I'm like more agitated when I'm done, right?
Mhm.
But if you like go in, just go like, I'm gonna sit down and meditate and just like be and like we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll come out and be like that. Maybe I'll be more calm. And probably you'll feel way better because you're not having an expectation of what's gonna happen. So um I think the goal thing is a challenge or just like looking ahead, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, with in regards to all this, like, having expectations and trying not to.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. You bring up a good point about like having expectations or rather like standards for yourself. And I know like between the two of us, like we can both easily admit, and probably like, you, if you're listening, can probably relate as well. We have too high expectations for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
We expect
big
ourselves to be
time.
perfectly productive. We expect ourselves to be incredibly mindful. We expect ourselves to have everything figured out, right? But I hope you know, dude, and like also once again, you listening, like you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to have it all together. We're figuring it out one step at a time. And as
Mhm.
Harrison always says, and I like bringing this back because it's one of my favorite quotes. We're learning to live for the first time. And so honestly, like I've been learning to not expect too much from myself.
Mm. It's not
But
easy
in
though.
yeah, it's not. But like instead to accept like, oh, what's the best that I can do? And accepting that.
Mhm.
And I think that requires self-awareness and self-forgiveness too, right? And being able to admit, oh, because my sleep has been like this, or because I haven't been taking care of myself in this way, this is the best that I can do. This is the best that I've got. But that's my best in this moment. But yeah, I feel you. I think I am definitely guilty as charged for expecting way too much of myself at a young age. And I don't know if that's taught or if that's just a self-imposed thing. I'd like to think that it's probably a taught
Mm.
thing, you know. Um, but I think the hard part about that kind of like having high expectations for yourself is that it works up to an extent, right? It helps you achieve
Right.
things, it helps you get things done,
Yes.
but then the satisfaction element is harder to attain and harder to achieve. And so I've been learning to balance that. But I don't know. What do you think, dude? Like, I'm sure you probably have felt the same way. And I know that this week, as you were telling me earlier, was like one where you needed to be a little bit gentler on yourself, expectation
Mhm.
wise.
Yeah, I the expectation, like having expectations of yourself is something that I've definitely had like a struggle with. Like
Mm,
it's yeah, it's brought me great things. I mean, this is a great example of this podcast. Like I wouldn't have done this is you know we're coming up on I don't know somewhere near 50 episodes or something. This actually might be it. I
that's
don't know.
awesome.
Um,
Really?
I think this might be it, but I may
Oh
be
shoot.
wrong. Because we're recording these in advance in case you haven't figured that out, people.
Celebration. Hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, but like that doesn't really matter. But like something like this wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the expectations of myself. You know what I mean? Or like
Hmm.
what I think I could achieve, because like it pushes you to do things. It's good. Like it is good in a sense. But when it's too much all the time, then you like it's almost impossible. You have to learn how to be kind to yourself. Like and what that means. Like I hear people say that all the time, and like I
Hmm.
still don't really know how that works. Like I'm trying to figure it out because I
Hmm.
know it's important and I want to be like uh, I love myself and I want to be kind to myself, but I don't know how to like if you spend your whole life just having expectations of how things should go or what you should achieve or do, and then because like we said, like things aren't going to happen that way, you're just always disappointed and mad and you blame yourself for it, right? Because who else is living your life? You are.
Hmm.
Then it's like it's not a good thing. So there's positives of it. I'm not trying to say it's like all bad,
Hmm.
but there's definitely like you have to find that in between maybe, or like have expectations for some things but just not like everything, because it's not going to work. Like it just will not happen that way if you have
Hmm.
expectations. So I mean, as for me, that is kind of it. Like I it's always been a problem and it continues to be, and I'm trying to I mean, talking about it helps, but
Hmm.
I'm trying to think and figure out how to like almost lower my expectations,
Hmm.
like set the bar lower in my brain. But then it's hard because
Yeah.
if you want to achieve things or like do stuff, you're like, I know I'm capable of this, so if I say that I'm not going to reach for that, then I'm not going to achieve it, and therefore I'm, not good or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
So I don't know. Like I do not know, and I'm curious like if a lot of people feel this way, or is it like certain really motivated individuals, because everybody's
Hmm.
different, right? Like everybody is
Hmm.
just
Of
naturally
course.
different. And I know people that are like just naturally a little less eager and motivated to do things, and
Hmm.
they're fine with it, and it's like it's not like one's better than the other, but when you are thinking that way, you put those expectations on yourself, and it's like I don't know, I just don't know.
Hmm. I feel you. This is like I feel you. This is something I was talking about with one of my friends. I think I was talking about this with Jonathan. This was about a year ago. Yeah, this was about a year ago, and this kind of was the revelation that kind of blew my mind. So I'm gonna say this for like myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
You listening, bro, you as well. I think I'm just gonna say this for all of us. But I think striving satisfied, learning how to strive satisfied and to create things from a place of contentment is such a valuable skill. And I say that, it's a skill. We're all trying to learn it. But it's, you know, I think what 2021 taught me personally is that you don't need to be unsatisfied in order to achieve or in order to create something. I remember I posted this one thing on my Instagram page, look at a tree. Does it need to be dissatisfied with its current place? Does it need to have high expectations of itself in order to grow into its fullest nature? No. It simply grows because that's what it naturally does. Perhaps
Mm.
look at like, you know, a flower, or even perhaps like, I don't know, a fox or something. Is it discontent? Does it like hate itself, or does it like expect a lot from itself? No. Might it face challenges and have to adapt? For sure. That's how evolution, works and strengthens itself. But at the same time, a fox doesn't need to be discontent in order to grow into its fullest potential, right? Challenge, though, is of course important. And so I think when we look at nature, and this is something that, you mentioned before, like when we're operating kind of in our most natural rhythm, we find that discontentment only serves to hamper our own peace and our own progress in many ways. And this is something that I'm learning for myself. Once again, I'm affirming this for myself, but we don't need to be discontent in order to achieve great things. If we operate from a place of already being satisfied, from a place of already being content and acceptance of like, oh, hey, this is what I'm capable of right now. Everything else then is an addition on top of that.
Hmm.
It reminds me of this one biblical quote. And first of all, just to clarify, I'm not like Christian or anything, but I think the essence of the quote is really powerful. And if you ever read the Bible before, you're probably familiar with this as well. But there's the quote: "Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you." Right? Various interpretations, of course, but all these things shall be added unto you. Not all these things shall be added and make you complete, or all these
Mm-hmm.
things shall be all these things shall be given to you and you will feel complete and whole and satisfied forever. But no, all these things shall be added onto what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in my mind, I interpret like kingdom of heaven to mean like, inner peace or just consciousness or just presence.
Right.
And that space of no expectations. When we're operating from the space of no expectations, everything is an addition because, we've already won. We're already content with what we have. Everything else is just added on top of that, like whether this podcast gets 1 view or 1 million views, it's an addition on
Mm-hmm.
top of what we've already got. Whether my next YouTube video does incredibly well or flops, that's relatively speaking. Whether it gets 1 view or 1 million views, it's still an addition onto,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, the enoughness, of this moment. And I am saying this for myself, just to remind myself, just as much as I'm saying it here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what that makes me think of.
That's really good. Like that quote makes a lot of sense. You can interpret it however you want, right? But it's like, if you're based, this is so funny. I was writing earlier
Mm.
about something, and
Tell us about that.
I was talking about that. I mean, the video will be out by the time this comes out. So it's a video on distractions that I'm making at the moment. It will be out by the time you see this. So if you want to go watch it,
Subscribe to Harrison King on YouTube.
And I think that because it hasn't started yet, but I was just writing and I was talking about distractions and like how like basically our entire current world is just distractions. And I just defined a distraction for myself as something that takes me away from living naturally. Which then I dove deeper into it and I was like, well, then that means like my apartment here is a distraction because I'm not living fully in nature. And the longer I stay inside, the less I'm going to go outside, which is distracting me from being outside where I want to be naturally, right? And that's not 100% related to what you're talking about, but it just made me think that like, yeah, like we have these distractions, and like being content is like out there, and that kind of made me. All of this is going on in my brain, and I was thinking about contentment today, so I wanted to say that because I was outside and I was like, this is just so great. That means that like if this is like my base state for me, if I feel like this is like where I should be, then everything else, like you say, is on top of that. But like I don't need to have anything more than that. But I feel like I do. When I'm outside, like I was sitting down by the trees, and I was just sitting there, and it was great, and I was so happy. It's like I don't need anything more than that, technically, right? Like if that's a base level like contentment, then anything else after that is just is an addition, right? It's like you're at, the whatever, like zero, and you don't need to go any more than that, but anything that does is just like an extra. And I really like the way that like how that breaks things up, because then it's like, because we know that if like you have inner peace and you're happy, right, and like then nothing else matters. Or like if you're the other way around, if you're not happy and you are seeking things, you're like, well, when I have blah 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 views or this much money or a family or whatever it is, right, live in this different house, then I'll be happy, which obviously we know is not true, but we still do it. We still try to seek it. So it's just the same thing you're saying, or just the other way around, where if you start with you just base level being great, then literally nothing else is important. And there's like kind of a peace within that, like that's like
Mhm.
kind of relaxing and calming, because it makes you feel like
Mhm.
you don't have to have expectations of what's going to happen, or you don't have to have extra goals or whatever. And this can go for like, this can go for like money and just like life in general. Like if you're able to have a roof over your head and you can eat and all these things, and it's like, and you're able to sustain that, and you're not really like, you're kind of just, things, money's going kind of in and out, but it's like, it's okay, you're not losing, but you're not
Mhm.
gaining, you're just there. It's like that. If you can find peace in that, then it's like, then everything else is just makes life so much better, on top of what's already there. So I really like the way that kind of that hits me. That's interesting.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, it's also important just to add, of course, like we're both in like a pretty privileged position to be able to say that.
Oh
Obviously,
yes,
like
of
this is
course.
contextual, like if you're really, really struggling, then it's a different box of
Yes.
chocolates. I don't know. I just had chocolate earlier, so I'm thinking about chocolates. Yeah. It also reminds me of this one Naval Ravikant quote. Or I'm not sure if he was quoting someone else, but I'm just going to attribute it to Naval Ravikant.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, expectation is, having expectation is essentially a desire, right? We
Yes.
want the future to turn out to be that way. It's a desirable future, an expectation, right? Naval Ravikant once said, "Desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want."
Yeah, it is. That's really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that one more time for y'all
Yeah,
listening.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Desire is a contract that we make with ourselves to be unhappy until we get what we want.
yeah.
Right. And so are there things that are worth desiring? Are there things that are I think Naval then goes on to say that, like, in life, oftentimes our problems stem from having too many desires. Like, oh, my coffee's too cold. I wish it was warmer. Or, oh, I wish I lived in a bigger house. Or, oh, I wish I was more productive this week. Or, oh, I wish I did this video better. Or, oh, I wish I had more things to say on this podcast, kind of thing. Right. But oftentimes, the more desires that we have, the more we're setting conditions on our happiness. But when we can simply allow things to be, and it's ancient Buddhist wisdom, right? The relinquishment of desire, right, and of attachment, right, non-attachment, non-desiring, right,
Mm,
and only choosing a few things to suffer over. For example, like what is worth suffering over? What's your passion, right? The root word of passion is passio, which is to suffer over. Um, what is worth suffering over? Okay, I desire to have an impact on the world, or I desire to help people, right? That to me personally is worth suffering over. As for whether my coffee's too hot or too cold, or whether I live in a big house or not, is quite frankly not that worth suffering over for me.
mm.
um yeah, what do you think of that?
So you always come up with these great quotes just out of nowhere. It's ridiculous. And I know you're like, oh, it's probably not like perfect. I'm like, yeah, it's probably like word for word, like exactly what he said. Like, don't lie to me.
Someone's gonna have to fact check me.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time, and then I'll see it. And then I'll tell you.
Desire is a contract that we make with ourselves to be unhappy until we get what we want.
And when you put it that way, it's like, well, then, like, why would you do that? Right? Why would you do that? You're like, I'm making the decision to be unhappy until blank. But that's not how we view it. I've never viewed it that way until now, and now I'm gonna go rethink my life after the podcast. Um, yeah, like that's essentially you saying like, I'm okay, or I want to. Actually, I want to. Is like, if you're desiring something, you want it, right? So if you want that, then you're also saying, I'm okay and want to be unhappy for until whatever. And then there's a condition on it. And I've never thought about it that way. And I can apply that to so many aspects of my life. I've been redoing my room,
Mm.
which you probably like since the beginning of this podcast. The first couple
It has
episodes
changed so much. I love it.
it was like a green backdrop, which is not there anymore. Actually, I just took it off the
Mm.
wall.
Okay.
And I'm like, so I'm saying this because I'm redoing my room. I'm just like adding new things, but then I keep going like, I really like this space, but I'm like, it'll be better, and like I'll be fully happy and like calm when I can have this.
Hmm.
But then when you put it in this context, now I'm like, well, like now I'm just saying I'm gonna be unhappy until my room is perfect. And it's like, well, it's never gonna be perfect. So I'm just gonna be unhappy forever. Right? So, man, you gotta be thinking. You got me thinking. That's really powerful. I think that if you think about it that way, it makes you like not want to desire anything.
Yeah,
It's
and that's
like,
like ancient like Buddhist fundamental wisdom, like
yeah.
non-desiring, right?
Mhm.
The Buddha defined enlightenment as the end of all suffering, or in some translations, then the end of desire as well. Um, I might be like, once again, fact check me on this. I'm not saying that I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
this, but
yeah.
like based off of some things that I've heard as well, some people also interpret it as the end of desire as well. And I think it just comes down to accepting the present moment. And I think that's what everything just comes back to,
Hmm.
like your capacities right now, where you're at, your living situation, your work situation, whatever's going on for you right now, finding at least, you know, some point of acceptance, accepting things as if you had chosen them. And I know that's like incredibly hard advice. Why would I accept, being broke as if I had chosen it? But I think like acceptance is the starting point of change. I think once we're able to accept that, okay, this is what it is, we can only like deal with something once we accept that it's in our hands and it's our responsibility to, take care of it.
Hmm.
Right. And especially with ourselves too. I think you've got me thinking as well. Like I want to take better care of myself this week. And I've kind of been doing that, but I want to take even better care of myself, especially mentally, just because this is a big transition, as I mentioned
Hmm.
at the start, and like kind of uprooting my life and going off into like this digital nomad minimalist journey, like Matt Diavella, Nathaniel Drew style. I don't know. It's nerve wracking, but just accepting that discomfort as well, as a part of growth. Here's a question for you. What do you need most in the season for yourself? Or like, how can I support you? Or like, what do you need?
Hmm. Um, I think I mentioned this earlier before, and you just kind of said like supporting myself, being kind to myself, and giving myself what I need, which is less than what I think it is, I think.
Mm.
And I think that's it. And those are simple things. This is why I think I get frustrated with it, because those are simple things. Like to say, like, oh, 3 things, great. Like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
easy. It's like, no, 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 no,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not. It's not. They're not simple things. Yeah, and like, and being like, just being like you said, being present, being mindful, being in the moment. We always come back to this, like on here and just in general. And I think my challenge with it is that like everybody talks about it. I think we all know it in some way, shape, or form. We've experienced it in some way, shape, or form. But um why that like quote was so impactful to me is like it's like you're saying the same thing. Like I know be present, be mindful. We're wording it in a different way that's like actionable in a different way that will lead to that. And I think figuring out how to be mindful in your life, because it's different in my life and it's different for you and it's different for you, the listener, and your family and your friends and like everybody. There's certain ways you can get to it, but figuring that out is like a priority, and it's really challenging because like there was a point a little while ago, well, I thought I was doing a really good job of it, and now I'm not. But it's like if I do the same things that I was doing back then, it doesn't work. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work anymore because like we talked about the other day, I'm different, right? I'm a different person, and like my circumstances have changed, and maybe whatever. So figuring out the actionable steps in your life, which are many different steps that lead you to being present and therefore at peace,
Mm-hmm.
is what I guess need and I'm trying to work towards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm trying to figure it out. Um and and I just want to say, and then I want to hear what you have to say, but
Mm-hmm.
uh as I've been going through the podcasts, like editing them and whatever, and putting them out, like first of all, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you, Amir. You're amazing.
Right back at you to talk to you, Harrison, king of podcasts.
But to share this with other people, it feels really special to me that like, you know, we could very much just have this conversation off the record, but it feels like special to share these kind of vulnerabilities like out. Sometimes it feels like a therapy session that we're broadcasting, and that's kind of scary, but also like very
feels great.
But it's also like really neat, right? Because I think we all feel similarly. I was going to say something, and now I have no idea what it was, but yeah, finding.
Being
I know.
present.
I was going to say that like as I've been going through, I'm like I want to just remind everybody that like we're talking about these things because we're trying to figure it out. Like I'm not talking about these if it ever comes across like I'm trying to tell you what to do. It's not at all. It's like I'm just sharing what I need to do. As most of this is just like this is what I'm trying to figure out and that I'm struggling with. And that's it right now. That's it. It's like trying to work towards that, being present and being mindful. I know all the things that could possibly lead to it, but I can't do it. And when I figure that out or start to get towards it, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let us know, please.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
What do you think?
Like, just like what helps me be present?
Well, that and also just the whole thing about actionable steps towards kind of mindfulness. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe both of those.
Well, I think it all just starts with, I think it all just starts with focus and awareness. And I think the simplest place to focus is just breath. So y'all, let's just take a deep breath together real quick. Just breathing in and breathing out. One more time. I know you're listening. Like, come on, do it with us. Do it with us. Okay.
No, it's so helpful.
Breathe in. And breathe out. Right. I think as simple as that, you know, when we're focusing on the breath, you know, there is no thought in that, right? We're simply focusing on the breath and being fully aware of the sensation of breathing. It's not like we're pulled into the future or pulled into the past, right? I think I heard this one amazing quote. I forget who it's from. Another quote. Amir is pulling up more quotes.
Yeah, he's going for
it. Right. But when we're aware when we bring our awareness to our breath and to our body, it naturally brings us into the present moment because our body can only exist in the present moment.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't exist in the future or in the past. It just exists here and now. Right. So when we bring our attention to like, oh, where am I sitting right now? Can I feel the chair underneath me? Or, you know, whatever you're doing right now, if you're washing the dishes, driving your car, or procrastinating on your homework, right? If you can feel wherever you are right now, I think that, you know, brings you into the now. I think also it's just cessation of thinking. You know, Ramana Maharshi, I believe, was it Maharshi or was it Krishnamurti? I forget. But one of the great spiritual teachers said, like, how do you measure your progress on the spiritual journey? And I forget who. I'm really sorry. I need to brush up on my quotes, y'all. I'm sorry. But I remember he said, the way that you're able to measure your progress on the spiritual path is by the absence of thought.
The less you're thinking, the better you're doing, essentially.
Essentially, yeah. And once again, I'm really sorry that I can't figure out whether that was Krishnamurti or whether it was Ramana Maharshi who was saying that. But, you know, yeah, the absence of thought, because thought naturally pulls you out of the moment when you're here, like kind of bringing your awareness into your body, into this moment, and not necessarily thinking about what you have to say next. Like, I don't know what I'm going to say next. I'm just kind of like letting it all flow out of just awareness in this moment. And that, like, I think this is something that I've been referencing, you know, since the start of this podcast, but like, you know, living as if it's a meditation, you know, like in every single action, like speaking right now, you know, looking at the camera, looking at the screen as well, you know, treating it as a meditation, just being fully here, feeling my chair, or every single step while I walk to the kitchen, or, you know, a single really conscious sip of some good water, you know. I think that's kind of what helps me stay grounded. And that's what I'm trying to focus on and remember, especially just like as times are changing, as things are moving. I think it's a time of transition for lots of people. You know, I like friends are getting married, engaged, moving out. Everyone's graduating, getting a job. It's crazy, right? You're going out on a trip, right? But I think like bring it back to now and just taking one step at a time. one conscious, one present step,
Hmm.
and not expecting anything of that step, but just allowing it to be as it is and just paying attention. And I think that's gonna like tie in really interesting, like with your entire idea on like distraction, right? We live in a world that's distraction oriented, that pulls our focus away from now. And I think that's just gonna be really interesting intersection. I can't wait to see what you do with that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Dude,
um,
I've been trying to figure out like, okay, it's been like 3-4 weeks since I put out a video. What am I talking about?
that's okay. Just whatever comes,
Yeah.
whatever comes to
Yeah.
mind.
No expectations. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm living that.
I think it's having my problem with like I hear what you're saying, and I've tried that. Where you're like
Mhm.
try to be with your body and like a breath and whatever. I find it helpful when somebody else tells me, because
Totally.
if I'm trying to do it myself, and like there was a period of time where I was able to like meditate
Hmm.
10-15 minutes every day by myself, completely fine. But now it's like not
Hmm.
that way, and I've had to go back to using Headspace, which
Yeah.
I was gonna say that the
Andy
sponsor of the, could you imagine?
Puddingcombe. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Sponsored by.
yeah,
Come on,
please,
we're playing for that.
we're putting it out into the world. That
Yeah,
would be
exactly.
a dream. It'll happen one day.
Uh-huh.
Sponsored by Headspace.
Manifest it.
But like, I have an expectation that it should work.
Mm.
So when I go, even like to myself, focus on a breath, I'm like, am I doing it right? Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing, And I can get, because I'm like, I expect it to have this result.
Mm.
And the times that it works the best is when I just do it. And I'm not like, almost like when I'm not busy, or I just go like, well, you know what? I just need to do this right now. I'm just going to do it. And like, I'm not thinking about, almost like when I'm busier, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't intentionally sit down to do it. It's like sometimes it works better because I'm not like, I'm sitting down and I have my water or whatever, and I'm going to have like 15-20 minutes. I'm going to come out feeling refreshed. It's like I have an expectation that it's going to happen this way,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't. And then I'm mad.
Yeah.
So like
Uh-huh.
that's where I have a problem with what you're saying, like personally, where I have a challenge with it, where
Mhm.
I know those things, I've tried those things, but then it's like, how do you not have an expectation about how they're gonna go? Because like I'm doing it because I want to feel this way, so I expect it's gonna work. But for it to
Mhm.
work, I can't expect that it's gonna work. But then I wouldn't do it
Yeah.
if I. So right, it's just like a um, it's that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
how do you figure that out? I think it's
Mhm.
just like I said, talking about it and being aware of it, and like it really is a practice. It really is a practice, but a practice without any expectation, which is not really something that we do just in general, right? Like if you're going to practice something like an instrument, I'm going in with the expectation of getting better, probably,
Mm.
or like learning how to play this song or whatever. And you could argue that that's the wrong way to practice, but I think just naturally that's what we want to do. We
Mhm.
practice anything, we want to achieve something, which is what we're talking about. But practicing being mindful, practicing being present requires you to have no expectation for it to fully work, at least for me.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, that's not easy.
Yeah, totally. I know it's so counterintuitive. It's such a brain mismatch, whatever crazy thing. I think conceptually, I think kind of for myself, like conceptually, like if I think about it as an activity, then I start placing like expectations on it. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this activity or this practice, this spiritual practice, I need to get better at it. I need to create progress. But like, I think there's such a thing as like progress on a horizontal level. Like, oh, am I able to become more mindful? Yeah, possibly. But I think more so like progress in a vertical way, in the sense of how deeply can I enter this present moment, and that's not something that like one can expect. It's just simply something that you do, and
Mm.
not do, it's simply something that you be. I think when it comes to meditation for myself, I don't think of it too much as an activity, but I think of it just as being. you know can I allow myself to be without doing anything? So basically do nothing.
But there's still an expectation there, right?
Hmm.
Like your expectation is to do nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know it's I
Just my brain.
yeah,
That's what I go
totally,
to, and I think that's why I
totally.
have trouble with it. But I totally know what you mean.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think it goes back to that quote that I still can't figure out where to attribute to, but I think it's it's the absence of thinking. It's like, for example, like when we're playing our instrument, like when you're playing piano and you're just like fully into it and you're not thinking about it, right? And like that flow
Right.
state, it just kind of passes through and you're not thinking about doing it.
Hmm.
You're kind of just like in it and you're doing it, and like there's some thoughts perhaps like to do it, but I it's kind of like that same thing. It's like there's no thinking to it. It's like a flow state, but it's so hard to find
I was just
sometimes.
like getting
So I
into it
feel
is the
you.
problem, right? Like that's
Hmm.
the challenge, is
Hmm.
that is getting into it, I think.
Hmm.
Because once you're there, even like meditating, I find it so easy to stay there.
Hmm.
But like it's getting into it, right?
Hmm.
Getting rid of the
Yeah.
thoughts, tossing them away.
Yeah. I think one thing that I personally like struggled with like early on, just like first getting into mindfulness and meditation, was like kind of the relationship with thoughts and the relationship with the mind. It's
Hmm.
like, am I like trying to push out and throw away my thoughts, or am I trying to like reject them or suppress them? But one thing that really helped me was like accepting my thoughts as part of the present moment, and simply like watching them like, oh, okay, wow, I can't slow my mind down. I can't find the peace. I can't find the stillness. Okay, that's a part of what is right now.
Hmm.
And accepting that and creating acceptance around the non-acceptance. Like I
Right.
remember 3 weeks ago, I was screaming in the car. I was on the phone with Andy and I was screaming in the car. I was like, I can't accept the present moment. Just like other things were like happening in my life, and I was just screaming like, no, this sucks. I will not accept the present moment. It was like a therapy rant session. And then she was like, what if you were to accept the fact that you can't accept it? I was like, can I accept that I can't accept it? Weirdly enough, yeah. And then doing so creates acceptance, which then, like, I don't
Dude.
know. It's weird. It's such a mind meld. Anyways, I don't know if any of this is making sense, y'all. We're just,
It makes sense to
just
me.
spitballing here.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know if
Mhm.
anybody else, if I hope you do, but
Yeah.
like fully, like you said, like we have to bring it back to expectations where we started,
Mm.
which, by the way, great topic, Harrison. I want to say thank you to myself because this is
Hmm.
really
Great
interesting.
topic, Harrison.
Um,
Harrison, king of topics.
this is an inside joke that it's not really inside, but that Amir and I have here, and he just calls me Harrison, king of whatever. When I hike a mountain, I'll be Harrison, king of the mountain, and then it'll be
King of the
complete.
mountain.
Um, um, but damn, you're making me laugh now. I'm forgetting what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
No
Um,
expectation.
yeah, having like we have expectations of what like mindfulness is, or what being present is, or whatever. Because like you have to ask, if you don't know anything about it, you've never been like introduced to this realm of things. Like you have to be told, kind of, and then that brings on an expectation of what you think will happen. And it's like doing it, or being, like you're saying, maybe it's not a practice, or maybe it's just being, is like reversing all of that. So you kind of have to like have expectations, so you kind of know what you think, like try to explore what you think it is, to then come back and not have expectations, which is why it's so weird. And like I'm kind of there. I'm
Hmm.
like trying to on working my way back from it, but um to just be like, when you say, oh, it's like not having not having thoughts, or being fully relaxed, or whatever. And like you said, even when you're angry like that, it's like that's not how I want to be. So it's not right. Like, oh, in my mind, being mindful and present is just like, or being like, it's like being calm and whatever. It's like you can be agitated and still be aware that you're being agitated, and just be like, this is it right now. And it's like, that's it. Not even, is it okay? Is it bad? But that's it. And that's a really good point that I'm gonna definitely like sit with that. It's like, even if you're angry yelling in the car, or
Hmm.
you're having thoughts, you're like, this is a part of the present moment. It's not trying to change the present moment.
Hmm.
And even if the present moment itself is you thinking about that, you're thinking about what the present moment is.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I feel like this is ridiculous at this point.
I know, right? If you're like, I'm just thinking, like, if for you listening, if you're like not into like mindfulness and
You're just
meditation,
like,
like,
what? Are
bro,
they
what
crazy?
is are they on weed or something? Like, well, you probably tuned out by now, but
They're
hey, if you're
nuts.
sticking around, we love you.
Yeah. Oh, anyway. Yeah, it's a weird cycle, but
Exactly. Question for you.
mhm.
Question: how did you get into mindfulness? And for someone who's just starting, like, how did you begin your own, you know, practice or journey of being?
Wow, this would
You
be
know?
so great if this was sponsored by Headspace because that's
Yeah, I know,
why.
right? Same, dude. Same.
um, in grade 12, I'll give you a quick thing. I read a
Mm,
book. I'd never really thought about anything like philosophical or whatever. I thought it was like you had to be super academic and like I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was, and it was not what I think it was. And I took a class, philosophy, in English in grade 12. The teacher was amazing, and that paired with a book I read called "The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari," like just put me on this path. And it's kind of like a philosophical book, I guess, in a way. It's by Robin Sharma.
mm,
There's a great quote there that I forget, and then I will remember and tell you at some point from that book. But that just made me interested, and I was like, the guy, he's a monk who sold his Ferrari. He guys turns into a monk essentially, right? Kind of thing. It's on his journey of like spirituality and enlightenment and mindfulness. And I had never tried meditation, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. I don't know what I'm doing. So I got Headspace because it was the app I had
mm-hmm,
seen before.
mm-hmm.
I didn't pay for it. I did the like 10-day
10-day
basics thing,
challenge.
which
Uh-huh.
by the way, I am doing it again right now. So all of that
Mm,
to say that I am, well, grade 12 would have been, this is like 4 or 5 years later. And after all of this journey, I have gone back to it. And so you're never too like good to go back to the basics.
mhm.
And I did that, and I remember it was so hard. I did like 3 minutes. It was the first one I ever did. It was 3 minutes. Now you think about it now. If you meditate at all, you're like, okay, like I can close my eyes for 3 minutes. I'll be okay. I did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the longest 3 minutes of my entire life. Why can't I do this?
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, the fact that I couldn't do it made me like want to do it more because I was
Mhm.
like, this is ridiculous. It's only 3 minutes, and I couldn't even sit through it. So I did it every day for a while. I didn't tell anybody for a while. I kind of was like embarrassed, maybe, like because it
Mm.
wasn't something that was necessarily talked about, at least amongst the people I was around. So, but I did it, and I could just continue with it. It was like off and on for a very long time. I got different apps and tried it. Calm is also a great app if you've
Mhm.
ever tried that one. But I like Andy on
Yeah, Andy
Headspace. He's just great.
Puddingcombe. Uh-huh.
Um, anyway, and I just like continued with it, and then started kind of that class on philosophy really helped me, think about things in a different way and like made me realize that there's like, I guess it was the first experience that kind of put me outside of my current situation or like realm of existence. And I realized that there's more outside of what I have. And I didn't even realize there was more until then. And then it made me go like, well, what's out there? Like what, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how all of this was connected. So I just continued to follow that path, and I've just been on it for a long time. And I do not have it figured out at all. Like in 1 week from today, I will have meditated every day for an entire year, and I'm not perfect at it. Sometimes I'm not even good at it. Sometimes I'm terrible. But I've done it, and I'm trying, and I think that's what's important. So that's my story, and that's where I am. And if you haven't tried it and you're like curious, I highly recommend Headspace. Um, because it's just they lay it out so well that if you have no
Mhm.
idea what you're doing, you'll start to figure it out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All that being said, Headspace, please sponsor us.
Yeah, please.
Thank
If
you.
anybody knows anybody at Headspace, please like
Headspace or Calm, please. We're
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
funny. How about you? How about you?
Yeah, same kind of thing. Headspace is where it started. Andy Puddingcombe. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, his voice, those illustrations, the 10-day challenge. Oh, memories. I remember I did that back in like, was it grade 11 or so? Like latter half of grade 11. I was I was really, I don't know how this all started, but I think this just went hand in hand with like my interest in self-development. Oh wait, no, this is exactly how it started. Let me tell you.
Take a seat.
Let me tell y'all how my personal development journey started. basically in grade 10, I think, yeah, grade 10, I went through a breakup. My grade 10 heart was broken, devastated. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get jacked. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to be good. I'm going to learn how to talk to girls.
The
So
proper
eventually, like,
way to deal with a
yeah.
breakup, by the way, might I add.
So, so then, like, throughout that year, I was basically like, do you know Charisma on Command? Like the
I've
YouTube
heard of it.
channel?
Yes, I've
Okay,
heard of
gotcha.
it.
Gotcha. Basically, I was just watching all their videos on how to like talk to girls and like all their videos on how to just be more confident and
Nice.
stuff. And eventually, like that led to like, oh hey, let me read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which then led to, oh hey, these people are talking about mindfulness and meditation. Let me try it out. So then I tried out Headspace, did the 10-day challenge. Yeah, it was so difficult at first. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. I cannot sit still for even 3 minutes. What is happening? But then I incorporated it into my morning routine. But because I was like a broke like 11th grader, I didn't want to pay for it. So I just kept on doing the 10-day challenge over and
Oh
over
yeah.
and over
Oh
and
yeah.
over again.
Me too.
Yeah, to the point where I memorized what he said so that it didn't even help anymore.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so I basically I just kept on meditating on my own volition, just going on YouTube, looking up other guided meditations as well. But I think the thing that kind of solidified it and changed things the most was a series of I want to say, let me just list out a whole bunch of books in sequence. I think this is probably four or five books, 4 or 5 books that I'd say really solidified kind of like the spiritual mindfulness practice and journey. First book, and this is my favorite book of all time that I always recommend, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Changed my life. I'm literally going to get a tattoo that says now on my arm. Changed my life. Most profound book I've ever read. Number 2, A New Earth, also by Eckhart Tolle. That one also, craziness. Third one, Wherever You Go, There You Are by John Kabat-Zinn. Kabat-Zinn, yeah. Yeah, book number 3, Wherever You Go, There You Are by John Kabat-Zinn. Book number 4, The Tao Te Ching. It's beautiful. There's this one video on YouTube. It's Wayne Dyer reading the Tao Te Ching, and it is, I don't know how to describe it. It just does things to my spirit. It feels good. I don't know how to describe it. I sound crazy right now.
I'm gonna steal. That's going on Instagram, by the way.
Yeah.
That
God.
clip. I'm putting this up.
Oh God, I'm so embarrassed.
That's so funny.
And then book number 5, Stillness Speaks, once again by Eckhart Tolle. That one just like is the icing on top that really just helps solidify everything. But if I were to sum it up to one book, it's The Power of Now. Like that one changed my life, bro. Oh, I was listening to Kendrick's album. I'm not sure if you're like into Kendrick Lamar like that, but I was listening to Kendrick's album, and first of all, such a good album. Such a tangent, by the way. Such a good album. He samples like Eckhart Tolle in the album, and it's kind of like his own like spiritual journey and realization of like meeting with him and talking and going through a spiritual awakening and then like healing his past trauma and everything. So when I heard the Eckhart samples, I was like, and when I heard Kendrick rapping about going into nature and being in the now, I was like,
wow.
Anyways, tangent.
I haven't listened to it yet, and I want to sit down and listen to it.
It's good.
I'm ready.
It's good. Such a tangent. If you're into Kendrick Lamar, I do love it. Mr. Morale, The Big Steppers.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's great.
Anyway, well, so that's my journey. The Tao Te Ching does things to my spirit. That's embarrassing. That's going to be on Instagram for the rest of the world.
No, it's perfect. It's wonderful. I'm glad that you said that. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if any of that helps you. I hope that helps you, listener, dear listener. I wish I had I knew your name and I could just talk right to you. But that's expectations. That's where we're at. Yeah.
You can, we don't know your name now, but you can always connect with us on Instagram
100%.
at Let's Talk About Life Pod. We would love to meet you.
Yeah,
that's
please.
At Let's Talk About Life Pod. Connect with us on Instagram, on YouTube. We'd love to get to know you.
Amir, what's your Instagram? What's your YouTube?
My Instagram is Ameer Corro, AMEERCORRO, and you can find me anywhere you get the internet. What about you, Harrison?
Harrison King Official, everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. If you want to watch that video, I'll put it in the description. If I remember to do that. Sometimes I say that and then I forget. So I'm sorry if I forgot and you go down there and it's not there. I apologize. But you can find me on YouTube at Harrison King Official. And that's it. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a little bit of a longer episode, but I appreciate you being here and joining us in this space, being present and not expecting anything. So have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the show, make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit us on Instagram and TikTok at Let's Talk About Life Pod. And for more information, head on over to harrisonkingofficial.com/podcast. Now it's time for you to get out there and have a deep, meaningful conversation in your own life.